Oh, did we get Mike? Mike's there.
Yes.
All right. We think everyone's here that needs
Yep,
to be here.
I'm here.
Staff is all here. We're all good. Get this party started. All right. Well, I will call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. I believe you all were sent the minutes of last month's meeting. They looked okay to me, but that's not always saying much, so I would gladly accept a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. All right. Review and approval of the change of the current TGT ordinance. Mary, would you like to catch us up on where we're at? It looks like it's all in order at this point. We've got all our questions answered, I think.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I made some changes and updated some information. I assume you all got the FAQs and the ordinance yesterday. There was an issue about what an accommodations broker was, and I got some clarification from KDOR. It is in your FAQs. I sent all this information to Kurt. So chime in if you have any issues or concerns, but essentially I believe it's ready to be recommended to the governing body.
Where was it? There was one of the, what was it? Under the, what about short-term rentals? There was a point here about rents out rooms or rents the owner's entire house. We think qualifies. Were we just not sure about a whole house? Where a whole house
Yes,
falls?
the whole house does, yes,
Qualify.
that does apply.
Okay. Okay.
Again, this is just to accommodate the Department of Revenue because of our discrepancy with state law.
Anyone have any specific questions at this point? I know we had the question of the difference in language, and that's in there on the different, I forgot what it was now, but brokers versus whatever that was, but looks like that got answered, so.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it looks fine to me. What's the process now, assuming we pass this out?
The next,
How long would it?
it would then go to the governing body, probably at the second governing body's meeting in December.
Okay.
And assuming they approve it, then there would be a 60-day protest period, would be published in the newspaper, 60 days for any Topeka resident to contest it and request an election, which is doubtful, but that's the next process.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a next year issue. I still go on record as saying I'd like us to see at some point look at doing a local registry to help collect some of our local dollars that aren't part of this necessarily, like our bed tax issues, some of those, but that's a next year thing and different than this, but it's connected in that way, and I'd like us to start taking a look at that because I think that's important to create that level playing field for everybody who's renting rooms out in the city of Topeka. But other than that, if this looks okay, again, I would take a motion.
I would move to approve.
I would second that motion.
Any other discussion, questions, comments? Anything else staff feels the need to add? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? There's no one left, so no. So with that, we will pass that out, and I guess it'll move through the process. All right. I don't know who's giving us a year-end distribution. I don't know if that's Jessica or somebody else, just giving us a snapshot of what the end of the year may sort of kind of look like, and we won't hold you to anything specific because we understand that it is not an exact science at this point, but an update would be appreciated.
Sure. Steve, did you want to go? Or do you want me to head?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So when we met in September, things were improving, and it looked like we were on a good track. I think everybody has seen the advice from the government as far as not traveling, for example, for Thanksgiving and getting together with families, and so that that is likely to have an impact. Mr. Dixon's on the line, and so he's got some data that is likely to be a little more updated than what I've got. But what I can tell you is that in July, we saw a 45.5% decrease year over year. It went to 17.1% in August. In September, it dropped to only 3.4% year over year. And so we thought we were on a pretty good track. In October, however, preliminary numbers have us dropping down 27.6%. And so that's going back the other direction. Unless Mr. Dixon's going to say something different, if I look at trends and I look at what was distributed in Q2 versus Q3, my guess is our Q4 distribution will probably be somewhere in the middle. Not as bad as Q2, but not as good as Q3 either.
Yeah, so October of this year, actually October of 2019 was actually a really good October for this market. It was up considerably over 2018. So comparing the two, it's a little misleading, but yeah, I mean, we were down to about 70% year over year revenue for the hotels in October. Through the first week and a half of November, we're about 68% year over year revenue. So in the open discussions I've been having for a couple months now, feeling like we're going to be at about 70% year over year revenue for the year is kind of holding. But yeah, it's certainly a slowdown from the relatively good third quarter that we had.
And so from the city's perspective, we would expect our next check mid-January. So it would be post, year end. But I think it really depends on how restrictive traveling becomes, whether that's, imposed by a government or just, people making that call for themselves.
When do we make final distribution payments and determinations to those organizations that receive funds on the year to year for this year? So when 19 or what are we 20 trying to take us back a year? So when will the final 2020 payments be determined and made?
So we will receive our next payment in January. So then we would distribute after that.
Okay, based on whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Has that been an issue in previous years, or were we so okay that we knew we were on pace to just pay it out and be okay? Because obviously other years we haven't had this drop in collections. We've kept pace. Or do we always wait until January to make that final payment to those groups?
Well, we won't have the information until January, so we can't distribute until then.
Okay.
But it's this, same every year.
Okay.
There's a lag.
Either you two have any
Ultimately, we do get those numbers relatively monthly from the state. There's some delays, whether they're closing out a quarter, it seems like, and I'm kind of new to that timeline, but we realistically should know what October and November collections will look like mid-December. So as far as predicting what the year is going to wrap up with, we'll be about a month off, but we should have a pretty good indication by then.
Well, right, and like
City doesn't have that information, so if Mr. Dixon would like to share with us, we would be interested.
Councilman Emerson, I saw you had a question. Councilman Emerson, you had a
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I heard Mr. Dixon say that he thinks year over year, we'll be 70% of last year's numbers, what he's projecting. Is that correct?
Correct.
We started off the year pretty strong in January and February, which helped kind of give us a little bit of a head start on the year. But of course, devastating end of that quarter, and then the second quarter was just abysmal. But we had, again, a relatively good third quarter, and we're holding at about that 65 to 70% year over year mark right now. Now, this COVID thing has escalated very, very quickly, so everything is with a grain of salt at this point. But yeah, this is naturally a slower time for this market anyway. So the only silver lining I can have with the flare up right now is this is generally a slower period anyway, relatively speaking.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just throw out about the 5th of January, we will have another new hotel opening. That's the scheduled opening at this point in time, is the 5th of January.
Wait, is that the one in Wheatfield or?
Yes.
Okay.
Spring Hill.
Any other questions? All right, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for the update. I guess we'll see what happens. 2020 plans for the committee. Really, I put this on here to keep it simple, but I would like, I don't know what this committee will look like next year, obviously. Although, when do we do that? First, in February? All right, so what I would like to do is, the old, just when you thought you were out, I'm going to pull you back in. I would like us to schedule a meeting for towards the end of January to sort of look at so we can have the snapshot of where we think things ended for this year. Whoever the next deputy mayor is, I will ask them if I can continue to serve on this committee as a member of it. Because I think there were some things we had hoped to get done this year, and then, like everything, COVID, and so here we are. But it would give us a chance at the end of January to look at how we ended the year and see what help or steps we might need to take moving into the rest of next year. Even if you guys aren't on the committee, you can help kind of have some insight to whoever the new group of folks is when they get here later. So I'd like to throw that out there, unless there's an objection to that idea. We don't have to set a date today, but we can look at calendars and plan something for the end of January of next year to take a look at things. That's all right.
No objection. I think it's a good idea.
With that, other items. So I have a question. This is my part. I'll ask my other item, and then if anyone else has any other comments today, I'll give you an opportunity. I have a zoo question. So there are currently dollars that go to the zoo through this, from the sales tax collections and has that been factored in to the zoo governance discussion as to what would happen to those dollars? And could you just give us an update? I've had a few questions, so I wanted to give the world an update on that situation.
I can, that's loud.
Yeah.
I can probably cover it, but Jessica can cover it in much more detail related to, it's part of the calculation, I'll just say in a nutshell, is for the projects that are new attractions. So it's a component of the financing for new attractions. So Jessica, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, so in part of our overall analysis of the zoo potential transition, it's included in that analysis. So the expectation would be that the city still receives that funding, and the payment to the zoo would be reduced by that amount because the funding would go to them. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think the part of the question I had was, when that was approved, was it contingent upon the zoo being operated by the city? And then are we worried about any changes because there's a governance change that we have to think about or deal with?
We've been looking at that from the standpoint of that it was approved to fund projects at the zoo. It doesn't necessarily mean that who's doing that work. The money has to go to fund projects at the zoo.
Okay.
And since we're going to continue to own the buildings, the site, the use will still continue, and it's still under control and being receipted by us to be utilized for those zoo projects.
Okay, and that would be my last question. And is the idea being, and I know we're still working through this, so I get that, but would the idea being that money would still come to the city, and then under the new governance, we would still make a determination how it's spent at the zoo versus just handing it over to the
Right. They'll present their request related to the projects that they're doing, such as I've seen the list related to their next 3 projects that they have on the list. And if I recall correctly, I think there's $1.5 million of their county sales tax money that's received for the project that will go to the giraffe project.
Okay.
So I think it's a $7.5 million project. They're going to raise $6 million, and then $1.5 million will come from the half-cent sales tax. That's going by memory, but that's what I recall.
But it's still coming through either staff governing body process before it just gets to be designated for projects versus just here, take the money and do it. I mean,
Yeah, I think
that's
we're
the short
obligated
version.
to handle it in that way.
Yeah.
Jessica, would you disagree or agree that we'd
No, no.
be handling it in that way, receiving it and then providing it as part of our support towards that project?
I'm having a little trouble hearing. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I think I'm sounding louder here than I am online, and so I'm trying to adjust. I feel like I'm blowing myself out here. So my statement was that we will, I believe, continue to receive the money and then provide it to FOTS as part of our contribution towards whatever project they're working on. And in the case of for example, the giraffe project, it's a $7 million project, if I remember right, or $7.5 million, and we have $1.5 million that we're looking at contributing, and that's going by memory. And then they're raising the rest of the funds for that contribution, for that project.
Yeah, so the expectation is that it still comes into the city, and then the city would pass that along to the zoo. We haven't, at least in my understanding of it, we have not historically said, here's $100,000, we expect it to be used in a certain way. Obviously, with the city that controls it, the zoo, we wouldn't have had to previously have had to control it in that fashion. Going forward, I think that would be need to be discussed, I guess, in the development agreement. My expectation is that we would offset whatever we bring in with TGT against what our payment, our management agreement payment would be.
Yeah, I think and I had one person, and I'd already thought about this, but asked, and I think the only protection would be that as we pass it through, there's at least a guarantee that it's going towards projects, whatever, infrastructure, as opposed to operating dollars, because I think the intent of that was, so that's all, just to make sure there's that step there, that's.
Yeah, that was in the language of the ballot issue, is that it would go towards the zoo for projects.
Okay.
And so we can't go against that.
Right. So just making sure that was in there. So did either councilman have a question on that? I think Kurt, did you have a comment or question?
Well, just want to clarify, how much TGT money is currently going to the zoo today?
The percentage, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's a percentage. It's not a set dollar amount, and I totally don't have that percentage. We can get that to you, but it's a percentage, so it fluctuates like everything else. I don't know,
Okay.
Sean. Do you know the answer to that? It's 0.5% of half of a something of part of a something.
Yeah, it's part of the 5% original that's mostly allocated to Visit Topeka, and then I think there's 11% allocated to our bid fund, and then the remaining 10% is this amount. So it raises just about as much as the bid fund does every year. If that makes sense. About, in a good year, $180,000 to $190,000. This year, 100,000.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you indulging me on that one. I just wanted to check on that, especially if we're going to keep moving forward with the governance. All right. Anything else from my fellow council members first that you'd like to say, add, or pipe in with? Not, is there anything else from anyone attending who'd like to say anything before we adjourn today? Speak now, or I guess have a good Thanksgiving. No? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Please do have a good Thanksgiving and stay safe out there. We are adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving to you all too.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys. Goodbye.